You slap the back of your neck without even looking. A whine near your ear, gone before you can find it. You barely register it anymore. It's just a mosquito, an itch, a curse word, a swipe of repellent, and you move on with your day. But for nearly all of human history, that same tiny whine meant something closer to a death sentence. Here's what almost nobody realizes. The mosquito has killed more human beings than every war, every famine, and every other predator combined. Not lions, not snakes, not each other. A creature so small you can crush it between two fingers has shaped human survival more than any beast that ever stalked the savannah. It has no claws, no fangs, no size to speak of, and yet, across the long arc of human history, it has been the single deadliest animal on the planet by an enormous margin. So how did your ancestors live long enough to become your ancestors at all? The story starts around 100 million years ago, long before humans existed, when mosquitoes were already perfecting their craft. Scientists have found mosquitoes preserved in amber from this era, wings intact, mouthparts identical to the ones biting you today. This insect had 100 million years of practice before a single human ever stood upright. By the time early hominins started walking across the plains of Africa, mosquitoes weren't just a nuisance. They were an ancient, patient, highly evolved killing machine, and they'd been perfecting the job since before the dinosaurs went extinct. Every generation of early humans that ever lived was born into a world where this insect had already had 100 million years to specialize in exactly one thing: finding warm-blooded bodies and feeding from them undetected. What made them so dangerous wasn't venom or teeth. It was something far sneakier. A mosquito bite is really a delivery system, and for tens of thousands of years, what it delivered most often was malaria. Malaria is caused by a microscopic parasite called Plasmodium, and it needs two things to survive: a mosquito to carry it, and a human body to live inside. Every time an infected mosquito bit one of your ancestors, it injected that parasite directly into the bloodstream, where it would multiply inside red blood cells until the body was overwhelmed with fever, chills, and organ failure. For early humans living in malaria-heavy regions of Africa, this wasn't a rare tragedy. It was constant. It was the water they drank, the air they breathed, the risk woven into every single evening near a river or a pool of standing water. A single bite at the wrong hour near the wrong puddle could end a life that had survived droughts, predators, and childbirth. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If malaria was killing so many people, so relentlessly, for so long, why didn't it simply wipe humanity out? The answer is written directly into your DNA, and it's one of the most remarkable examples of evolution, acting in real time. In the 1940s, a British physician named J.B.S. Haldane proposed something that seemed almost backwards. He suggested that certain genetic blood disorders that seemed harmful on the surface, might actually be protecting people from malaria. It sounded almost contradictory. Why would a disorder that damaged red blood cells ever be an advantage? Decades later, researchers confirmed exactly what Haldane suspected. People who carry one copy of the gene for sickle cell trait are significantly more resistant to severe malaria than people without it. The red blood cells warp into a shape the parasite struggles to survive inside. It's a trade-off written in blood. Carry one copy and you gain protection. Carry two and you develop sickle cell disease. Evolution wasn't choosing a perfect solution. It was choosing the option that kept the most people alive long enough to have children in a world where mosquitoes ruled the night. This wasn't an isolated case either. Geneticist Sarah Tishkoff, who has spent years studying genetic diversity across African populations, has documented multiple malaria resistance traits that evolved independently in different regions, each one a slightly different genetic bargain, struck against the same relentless threat: thalassemia, Duffy antigen negativity, which makes red blood cells nearly invisible to certain malaria parasites; G6PD deficiency. Different populations, separated by thousands of miles and completely different environments, arrived at different genetic solutions to the exact same problem. That's not coincidence. That's the fingerprint of a threat so severe it independently reshaped human biology in multiple places at once. Your body, if your ancestry traces back to certain regions, may still be carrying the genetic scar tissue of that ancient war, whether you've ever known it or not. Think about what that means. The mosquito didn't just threaten your ancestors. It rewrote their genome. It reached into human biology at the cellular level and left permanent evidence of the fight for survival. Evidence that some of us are still carrying around today without ever knowing why. A blood test result, a trait passed down through a family, a quiet biological memory of a war fought long before written history. But genetics were only half the battle. Early humans didn't just wait to be reshaped by natural selection. They fought back, using whatever tools their environment gave them. Archaeological and anthropological evidence suggests early humans built fires not just for warmth and cooking, but because smoke drove away biting insects. Communities in malaria-heavy regions often built homes elevated off the ground, away from standing water where mosquitoes bred. Some groups timed their movements around water sources to avoid dawn and dusk, the hours when mosquitoes are most active, a behavioral pattern still observed in traditional communities today. None of this was written down as medical advice. Nobody had a name for the parasite or the insect carrying it. It was survival knowledge passed from person to person, generation to generation, earned through unthinkable losses, refined slowly over centuries by trial and error, by grief, by whatever worked well enough to keep the next generation alive. Here's where the story gets even stranger. In 2016, researchers examining ancient Egyptian mummies found genetic traces of Plasmodium falciparum, the deadliest malaria parasite, confirming that malaria was already an established killer in human civilizations thousands of years ago. This wasn't a modern tropical disease that emerged recently. It was ancient, present at the birth of recorded history, likely present long before that. Every civilization you've ever studied, every empire, every migration, every ancient trade route happened under the constant shadow of this insect. The builders of the pyramids lived with it. Early river-valley civilizations along the Nile, the Indus, and beyond built their entire way of life beside water sources that were also breeding grounds for the very insect, capable of ending their lives without warning. And it wasn't just malaria. Mosquitoes carried yellow fever, dengue, and other diseases that shaped where humans could safely settle and where they couldn't. Entire regions of the ancient world were effectively off limits, not because of geography or hostile tribes, but because the insect life made survival there nearly impossible for outsiders without genetic or acquired resistance. Explorers, soldiers, and settlers throughout history who entered these regions without local immunity often suffered catastrophic losses, sometimes losing more people to disease than to any human conflict they came to fight. History is full of moments where this tiny insect quietly decided the outcome of events that had nothing to do with insects at all. When French forces tried to hold on to their colony in Haiti in the early 1800s, yellow fever swept through the army faster than any battle could, killing tens of thousands of soldiers and ultimately forcing a retreat that reshaped the map of the Americas. Centuries earlier, the marshlands surrounding ancient Rome were so thick with malaria-carrying mosquitoes that invading armies often found the swamps themselves more lethal than the legions defending the city. Historians have long debated how much malaria contributed to the slow decline of the Roman Empire, but the disease was undeniably a constant, grinding presence in Roman life, striking senators and soldiers alike with no regard for rank or wealth. Centuries later, attempts to build the Panama Canal stalled for years and cost thousands of workers their lives to yellow fever and malaria until engineers finally understood that controlling mosquito breeding grounds mattered more than any feat of construction. Wars have been won and lost, empires strengthened and weakened, entire construction projects abandoned and revived, all shaped by an insect most of the people involved never even thought to blame. It wasn't until 1897 that a British doctor named Ronald Ross discovered exactly how malaria spread, proving that mosquitoes specifically were transmitting the parasite between humans. For the entirety of human history before that moment, nobody knew why the fever came in waves near stagnant water. Nobody understood the connection between the insect and the illness. Your ancestors fought this killer for thousands of generations, without ever once knowing what it actually was, without a name for the enemy, without any way to see the mechanism doing the damage.